And now, broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California, your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Hey, the headlines today for the left stream media, of course, are, can anyone stop Hillary? When they should be asking, can anyone stop Trump? And the answer to that appears to be only Ben Carson, who at least is ahead in Iowa. But being ahead in Iowa means that you have come in favor with the Republican primary voter, but it doesn't always bode well going forward. And Trump being ahead in the polls for over 100 days, and Trump's incredible ability to continue flying high is confounding even the Republican establishment, 74% of whom are now coming around and believe that Trump is very likely to end up as the GOP nominee. Well, surprise, surprise. We told you that here on this show early on. I will never forget the reaction. I criticized Trump's initial announcement in the day that he came out. Some constructive criticism. And you guys took me to task for it and have been staunch supporters of the man ever since. No one else is coming anywhere close in terms of the broad base of support, the ability to attract new voters. There are some polls out that are showing that Donald Trump, if nothing else changes, will become the Republican nominee. Now, there's a lot of distance between now and then, but in a hypothetical matchup between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, it's almost a dead tie. But a large percentage, 22%, would prefer someone else, anyone else. But not Jeb Bush. Don't look now, but is the Bushy in trouble? He's laying off campaign staff. He is crying the blues, and he's still got $10 million in the bank, but that doesn't go real far in a presidential campaign, especially the way they're run these days. If you want to have any kind of a chance, I mean, that wouldn't even be enough to advertise on television in one state. It's pathetic. But he was supposed to be the establishment favorite, the money guy, and now the moneyed interests that back Jeb Bush are getting nervous. And we're going to play you a little clip of an interview that Megyn Kelly did with him. I don't care what anyone says. I love that woman because she asks the hard questions that no one else will ask while they're busy kissing up to these politicians. And it is so fascinating. It's so predictable. Absolutely predictable that if you read the headlines from the mainstream media, Hillary knocked it out of the park. Hillary was unflappable. Hillary. And can she be stopped? Oh, my word. She's just had such a great October. There's a great article. It's up at Fox News, written by K.T. McFarland, who was a defense policy analyst with going back, I believe, Reagan, Nixon administration and others. And the headline is, Hillary Clinton showed us a glimpse of her soul at Benghazi hearings. It was chilling. And when I read I'm going to read you her article because it's very well written. She says, I did not watch the Benghazi hearings, unlike many others, in hopes of catching Secretary Clinton out with my ears perked up for some admission that could sink her presidential ambitions. Secretary Clinton did not disappoint in her performance on Thursday. She admitted to no wrongdoing, nor to breaking any laws. Mistakes were made by others. The fault lies elsewhere. She put up with hours and hours of questions, and no one laid a glove on her. Secretary Clinton was far more adept at bobbing and weaving than the members of Congress who questioned her were at pinning her down. She brushed off blame by saying Security decisions were handled at lower levels of the State Department professional staff, not by the secretary. She didn't receive Ambassador Stevens' request for more security, implying that if only she had, things might have turned out differently. It was a masterful performance. She showed enormous discipline and nearly superhuman stamina. She let nothing slip. And in the end, she let everything slip. She got a perfect score, but failed the test. She didn't mean to, but she showed us a glimpse of her soul. It was chilling. We now know that when Secretary Clinton met the plane carrying the bodies of the 4 Americans who died at Benghazi, that the Obama administration had initially lied about what happened. She stood over the flag-draped coffins of 4 dead Americans, knowing that the first narrative blamed their deaths on an internet video, which caused a demonstration outside the consulate to turn into a deadly attack, when she already knew the truth. She looked into the eyes of the families of the fallen heroes, knowing all about that. She always knew they died from a planned terrorist attack from an al-Qaeda-like group. That's what she told her family and foreign leaders, according to newly released emails. So why support the false narrative at the start? Because the Obama administration had an election to win 8 weeks later, and a terrorist attack that killed 4 Americans didn't fit that plan. President Obama asked voters to reelect him because he had killed Osama bin Laden. Al-Qaeda was on the ropes, Gaddafi was dead, and the Libyan war a success. The wave of war was receding. President George W. Bush's war on terror was over because Obama and Clinton had won it. A terrorist attack that killed Americans at Benghazi did not fit into that campaign narrative, so it had to be retold and spun into a different story. It wasn't radical Islamic terrorists, but a spontaneous demonstration that got out of control in reaction to an obscure internet video. In the end, the Benghazi hearings probably didn't change many minds. Secretary Clinton supporters will say it was a waste of time, a politically motivated witch hunt. Secretary Clinton's detractors will say she never answered the questions. But for me, it wasn't the questions or the answers that mattered. It wasn't about negligence or criminality or incompetence. Indeed, it was, and still is, about character. And Secretary Clinton has been found wanting. The even greater tragedy today is Secretary Clinton doesn't think she did anything wrong. In today's Washington, integrity and truth-telling, even to mourning families, take a backseat to the relentless pursuit of power. No wonder the rest of the country wants to throw all the bums out. Well, I don't think you can say it or put it in perspective much better than that. That's Kathleen Troika McFarland, who's a Fox News security analyst and the host of Fox News DEFCON 3. She served in national security posts in the Nixon, Ford, and Reagan administrations. Character. Came down to character. And Clinton doesn't get it, and neither do her supporters, and that is the problem. 323-746-TALK. We will be right back after this break. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. On September 11th, 2012, by 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the attack by a terrorist group associated with al-Qaeda was still underway against our consulate and CIA compound in Benghazi, Libya. By this time, the whereabouts of Ambassador Chris Stevens were unknown, but the State Department had been informed of the attack and that Sean Smith had been found dead. The following is a verified timeline. I just figured if you didn't get the gist of it yesterday with the clips we played, I'm going to walk you through the timeline so that you can then understand what happened and why everybody is so upset, except for the left-stream media. The following is a verified timeline of what then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, President Obama, the White House, and various administration agencies knew and when they knew it, and the now verifiable lies told by all concerned for more than a week afterwards. Thanks to new information uncovered by the Benghazi Select Committee, we now know for a fact, at least in private, Clinton was telling the truth, telling others that an anti-Muslim YouTube video had absolutely nothing to do with what she immediately knew was an organized terror attack, and one that resulted in the murder of 4 Americans, including our ambassador. Nevertheless, publicly, the White House, Obama, and Clinton spent more than a week afterwards covering up what they knew was the truth. The night of the attack, September 11th, 2012, 6:07 p.m., State Department's Operations Center sends an email to the White House, Pentagon, FBI, and other government agencies that Ansar al-Sharia has claimed credit for the attack on its Facebook and Twitter accounts. Does it bother you as much as it bothers me that we get news from Facebook and Twitter? I mean, it just seems so bizarre. But back in the day, I guess you would produce some sort of a video and then release it to news sources or newspapers, and then they would pick it up. But now it's much easier. You just put it on Facebook and Twitter. That's what the terrorists do now. 10:08 p.m., referring specifically to Benghazi, Hillary Clinton issues a statement blaming a YouTube video for the violence. She makes no reference to terrorism. Now, I want you to listen carefully. This is exactly what Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said. Some may have thought to justify this vicious behavior as a response to inflammatory material posted on the internet. The United States deplores any intentional effort to denigrate the religious beliefs of others. Our commitment to religious tolerance goes back to the very beginning of our nation. But let me be clear, there is never any excuse for violent acts of this kind. When she says the United States deplores any international effort to denigrate or intentional effort to denigrate the religious beliefs of others, she's referring to the YouTube video. What is shocking is we know that she knows the truth, but she puts this out anyway. A little more than an hour later, Clinton privately tells her daughter the truth at 11:12 p.m. via email. Nobody was aware of it until it was discovered by the Benghazi Select Committee. Clinton emails her daughter Chelsea and says 2 of our officers were killed in Benghazi by an al-Qaeda-like group. September 12th, 2012. This is the following day. In a speech at the State Department, again referring to Benghazi, Clinton told the world that the attack was a response to inflammatory material posted on the internet. Some have sought to justify this vicious behavior, along with the protest that took place at our embassy in Cairo yesterday, as a response to inflammatory material posted on the internet. America's commitment to religious tolerance goes back to the very beginning of our... She says the exact same thing. And then later that same day, so get this. This is less than 24 hours after the attack, shortly after she gave this speech at the State Department. She says, according to newly discovered documents uncovered by the Benghazi, these are documents that have been recently uncovered. Clinton told the Egyptian Prime Minister Hisham Kandil that the attack had nothing to do with the film and that it was a planned attack, not a protest. We know that the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. I'm reading the stuff. Sorry. And these are some of the screens from the presentation that was put up by the Benghazi Select Committee, including Representative Jim Jordan, whose words and comments and in his interrogation we posted yesterday. Later on that day, during a White House Rose Garden speech, President Obama connected the anti-Muslim video to the Benghazi violence. So now it goes from Hillary to the president, who are standing together to defend basically a political narrative. They've politicized the narrative, but it's a lie. That's the only problem with it. It is a lie, and they know it's a lie. This is the president. Since our founding, the United States has been a nation that respects all faiths. We reject all efforts to denigrate the religious beliefs of others, but there is absolutely no justification to this type of senseless violence. None. And then later on that evening, Obama is talking to Steve Croft of 60 Minutes. And here's the exchange. Croft, Mr. President, this morning you went out of your way to avoid the use of the word terrorism in connection with the Libya attack. Obama, that is correct. Croft, do you believe that this was a terrorist attack? Obama, well, it's too early to know exactly how this came about, what group was involved. Now, mind you, as the president is saying this, he knows and Hillary knows that it was Ansar al-Sharia, an al-Qaeda-connected group that they believe is responsible for doing this. That is what they are officially telling heads of state. But he goes on 60 Minutes and he tells a lie. But obviously it was an attack on Americans, and we're going to be working with the Libyan government to make sure we bring these folks to justice one way or the other. Folks to justice. Doesn't say anything about Islamic terrorists who planned an attack, who had grenades there, who had all kinds of other things where there's clear, absolute evidence this was a planned terrorist attack, and he knew it. Croft says it's been described as a mob action, but there are reports that they were heavily armed with grenades. That doesn't sound like your normal demonstration. Obama, as I said, we're still investigating what happened. I don't want to jump the gun on this, but you're right. This is not a situation that was exactly the same as Egypt, and my suspicion is that there are folks involved in this who were looking to target Americans from the very start. Folks involved. He can't say Islamic terrorists. He can't say Islamic jihadists. He can't say that this was a Muslim-inspired attack on America, because if he did, I don't know what would happen. What, would he lose some friends? The friends like the Egyptian president, the Iranian president who is out there saying death to America every 5 minutes? Later on that evening, Beth Jones, the acting Assistant Secretary of State for Near East, sends an email to top State Department officials that reads in part, the group that conducted the attacks, Ansar al-Sharia, is affiliated with Islamic extremists. So the adults who work in the government were telling the truth behind the scenes to our allies or to foreign heads of state like the Libyan president, the Egyptian prime minister, and the State Department knew. So the president knew, Hillary Clinton knew, there's evidence that they knew, and yet they still perpetuated a lie. They perpetuated a fraud. And that is why people are so upset over how Hillary Clinton is getting away with it. We will be right back after these messages.
Don't you think it's about time you treat yourself or someone you love to something very special? Well, Ozell Jewelers, the finest jewelry store in the high desert, is known throughout the high desert for having the largest variety of fine-looking jewelry and gifts for every special occasion. Ozell custom designs and manufactures their own jewelry, so you'll be able to find exclusive, one-of-a-kind, stunning styles you won't find anywhere else in Southern California. If you're looking for fine jewelry at unbeatable prices, Ozell Jewelers is the place to go. Show appreciation to that special person in your life with something special to cherish forever. Ozell Jewelers, voted best jewelers in the high desert by the Daily Press regularly for years. Ozell Jewelers has been putting smiles on high desert faces for over 30 years. Ozell Jewelers in Rancho Cucamonga, Palm Desert, and Amargosa Road by Red Lobster in Victorville. Ozell Jewelers.
The timeline of the days after the September 11th attack on our embassy in Benghazi, Libya in 2012. So all day long, you have Hillary, you have Barack Obama saying it was a video. It was, we don't want to denigrate other people's religions. And we have a proud history of religious tolerance going back to the beginning of our founding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, the people privately, they are telling people, we know it was a terrorist group. We know the name of the group. It's Ansar al-Sharia. And the official truth is not being dispersed to the American public. So September 13th, in a prepared remarks at a State Department function, in direct contradiction to what she privately told Egyptian Prime Minister just a day earlier, Hillary Clinton again blames the anti-Muslim video. This is her words exactly. Unfortunately, however, over the past 24 hours, we have also seen violence spread elsewhere. Some seek to justify this behavior as a response to inflammatory, despicable material posted on the internet. So it went from inflammatory material to inflammatory, despicable material. As I said earlier today, the United States rejects both the content and message of that video. First time she actually mentions the video. The United States deplores any intentional effort to denigrate the religious beliefs of others. At our meetings earlier today, my colleague, the foreign minister of Morocco, said that all prophets should be respected because they are all symbols of our humanity for all humanity. I can't believe she got away with saying that. And it's clear from the emails that were exposed yesterday, from the messages she was sending out officially to both her family and to heads of state, that she knew it was a pre-planned terrorist attack. Why couldn't she just say that? And of course, I'm sure that question was answered yesterday by Politichic's Anne-Marie Morel, who said the minute she admits that this was all political cover-up, she's finished. So all she has to do is just keep lying. But the lies keep on coming. The following day, September 14th, now the lies are spreading to White House Press Secretary Jay Carney, who tells the White House Press Corps, we have no information that Benghazi was a pre-planned attack. The unrest we've seen around the region has been a reaction to a video that many Muslims, find offensive. And while violence is reprehensible and unjustified, it is not a reaction to the 9/11 anniversary that we know of or to U.S. policy. Flat out lies through his teeth. And then the huge lie, the biggest lie, is spread when United Nations Ambassador Susan Rice goes on all the Sunday shows. This was September 16th. And what she told Bob Schieffer at Meet the Press is what she told everyone. Based on the best information we have to date, what our assessment is as of the present is, in fact, what began spontaneously in Benghazi as a reaction to what transpired some hours earlier in Cairo, where, of course, as you know, there was a violent protest outside of our embassy sparked by this hateful video. But soon after the protests began outside the consulate in Benghazi, we believe it looks like extremist elements, individuals joined in that, in that effort with heavy weapons of the sort that unfortunately are readily available in Libya post-revolution, and it spun from there into something much, much more violent. That was a lie. She knew it was a pre-planned attack. There was no protest or demonstration in Benghazi. There's no evidence of it whatsoever. And the reaction of the mainstream media is pretty much summed up in one word: meh. They don't care. It is irrelevant. They don't care. And that's the end of it. And of course, what about the fact that Hillary Clinton could have sent in forces to react very quickly? And she didn't. She didn't. So she can say all day long that she wished and wanted to do everything she could, that she stays awake at night dreaming about it and wondering about it and wondering what she could have done. But the reality is she did nothing except lie. And that is a person that more than half the country wants to be the next president of the United States. Well, let's hope not more than half the country, but at least half the country, if you figure how divided we are here at this moment. It is deeply, deeply disturbing when you take into account that this is we're talking about national security here. We're not talking about trivial things. We're talking about protecting our people who are in harm's way overseas. Those who represent and wear the flag of this country, even if it's in a diplomatic capacity, it still makes them a target, as you can clearly see. And the bottom line is, if you look at her record and the way that she handled this and the way she's handling it now, this is a warning sign. If Hillary was someone you were going to get into a relationship with, and I'm not suggesting that. I know maybe Bill Clinton might like that, but she has flaws that are unfixable. She has a pathological inability to tell the truth and take any ownership or responsibility for anything that she's done. She is always blaming others. And it's funny, if you remember as a kid, whenever you point a finger at somebody, the joke was there's 4 pointing back at you. Well, I guess there's 3, if you figure the thumb doesn't actually point backwards. So there's 3 pointing back at you. Okay. I can't tell you why so many seem so willing to just excuse something that is a monolithic breach of faith and breach of trust with the American public. And this is a person who we would then be listening to for at least 4 years, telling us what's going on, trying to lead us, and use that bully pulpit to persuade the American people one way or another on major issues, on things of national import. And a majority of people believe that she is untrustworthy and untruthful, including about this matter. So we'll see if it translates into anything in the polls. We're going to take a break, and when we get back, we're going to roll you a clip about the Jeb Bush campaign in trouble and an uncomfortable interview with Megyn Kelly. Be right back. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro Shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. Jeb Bush in serious trouble. He is talking to Fox News's Megyn Kelly, and it gets a little bit uncomfortable because Megyn never backs down. She doesn't care if it's the Trumpster or Hillary Clinton or anyone else. She goes after the jugular to get the truth. Here it is.
Well, before the Benghazi hearing wrapped up tonight, some of the 2016 candidates weighed in, with Jeb Bush earlier calling the Benghazi security failures a, quote, stunning example of incompetence. But if it is fair to question Mrs. Clinton for failures leading up to September 11th, 2012, why is Governor Bush arguing it is not fair to question his brother for failures leading up to September 11th, 2001? Joining us now, former governor of Florida and Republican presidential candidate, Jeb Bush. Governor, good to see you tonight. Why? Is it a double standard?
Not at all, because if someone had evidence that there was a pending attack, there was a lot of investigations after 9/11. If there was tangible evidence that there was an attack that was pending and no one acted, of course there would have been criticism, but that's not the case.
You know they're arguing that there was. Trump argues George Tenet offered a warning that an attack
Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know anything about this, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. There were massive investigations of this. There were hearings. And did we let our safeguards down? Sure, we did. I mean, under the Clinton administration, it was a law enforcement operation. But in the case of Benghazi, there were clear signs that this consulate was at risk. It had already been attacked. It was 9/11. There wasn't the security. And I think the investigation, the testimony today bears that out.
What did you make of Hillary's testimony today?
The problem is Mrs. Clinton didn't accept responsibility. Well, I didn't see much of it, but she's not accepting responsibility. 2 weeks ago in the debate, she said that Libya was a great example of smart power. Well, I think it's in total chaos now, and leading from behind was not the best way to deal with this problem, and the security problems that exist created a tragedy of 4 American lives lost. And so this was not a great day for the Clinton Department of State, for sure.
Let's talk about the latest in the polls, because speaking of Donald Trump, he is #1 atop the leaderboard. According to the latest ABC News poll, he's at 32. You're at 7, in 7th place. The Real Clear Politics average, he's at 27. You're at 7, in 5th place. He has said that if his poll numbers tank, he'll get out of this race. What would it take to make you get out?
I'm not getting out. I believe that we have a plan to be very competitive in the early states. We have the resources to stay with this. I'm campaigning hard. I'm campaigning with heart. I'm campaigning in a way that will draw people towards our cause. Herman Cain was the winner at this time when he was running. Hillary Clinton was up by 26 points in October against Barack Obama. Rudy Giuliani was the front runner, 8 years ago. So this is the beginning of a hard race. I never thought it would be easy, and it certainly hasn't been. And I believe that I'm going to win the nomination.
But no one's ever had this kind of a lead for this long a time and then gone on to lose the nomination.
Well, let's talk about it in March. We'll see what happens.
How badly do you think your immigration policies are hurting you in this race? Because according to the latest poll out of Iowa, this is Quinnipiac, 37% say they believe Trump can best handle illegal immigration. Just 5% say you can.
Well, when people know that I've written a book about the subject that calls for securing the border, have a practical plan to do that, have a practical plan to deal with the visa overstayers, to create a guest worker program, to have a path to legalized status, not citizenship, a practical conservative plan that wouldn't cost hundreds of billions of dollars.
They know all that, and they know that Trump is out there saying that Mexico is sending its rapists and so on, and they are behind him and not you on this issue from the polling.
Once they get all of the facts, my guess is that you're going to see that Donald Trump won't be at whatever percentage he is today. And we'll try. This is why we have a democracy, right? This is why, I know you guys are consumed by the process. I'm concerned about people that want to be lifted up, that are stuck. 6 million more people living in poverty. $2,300 reduction in disposable income for the middle class of this country. I'm talking about ideas to break the logjam in Washington, D.C. and fix it. And I don't believe the front-running candidate for the Republican nomination cares about people like that.
Well, let me ask you about him, because in watching you at the debates, sometimes he takes these personal shots at you and you're low energy, and then he seems to praise you when you have a vigorous answer as sort of responding to his taunt. Now you're high energy. To me, it seems like you stand out there. You don't know what to do with it. It's like, how am I supposed to respond to this? You tell me. Do you have a plan for dealing with Donald Trump?
We're in the same boat, Megan.
Well,
we're in the same boat, I think.
But I'm not running for president.
I mean, come on. This guy is totally unique. He's not a serious candidate. He's a great entertainer. I get all that, but I'm running because I think people need to be lifted up. We're in a deep funk in this country. We have a divisive president. We don't need another divisive president. We need someone to unite us around high sustained economic growth and keeping us safe. Donald Trump is not my motivation to run. I wish him well. I don't have bad feelings about anybody, but I believe that I'm going to win this nomination when people hear the views that I have and my leadership experience to fix it. I got to do this not in Washington where nothing happens. I got to do it as the governor of a swing state where conservative principles allowed everybody to have a chance to have rising income.
Governor Jeb Bush, it's good to see you again. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Megan. Take care.
You got to be kidding me. I mean, we're supposed to believe that Jeb Bush, who has had a silver spoon in his mouth since birth, his father, a former president and vice president, Kenny Bunkport, Maine, all the money, privilege, all the clubs, all the insider stuff, and and all he cares about is just lifting up the average poor American out there. And that's why once you read his book on illegal immigration, you're going to be for unchecked, massive erasure of the border, bring in anyone and everyone from anywhere in the world illegally so they can compete with you for work. They can compete with your kids for educational resources and the finite resources we have within our states. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I thought I was listening to Hillary Clinton when he said, go read my book. If you'll just go read my book, as soon as a candidate says, if you'll just go read my book or go read my white paper, what they're really saying is, I don't possess the wherewithal to persuade you in the next 30 to 60 seconds with my ideas, because that's how your ideas have to be conveyed in a presidential election. Nobody's going to read your big, long book. We got it. You love illegals and you hate Americans, or you love illegals more than you love Americans. Okay. If I want to be fair to you and be really nice about it. But in the end, you favor a policy that most Americans do not favor. And they're so pissed off about politicians screwing them over on it that they prefer, and it must have pained Megyn Kelly to say it, but they prefer Donald Trump and Donald Trump's strong language over your milquetoast, mealy-mouthed policy that is not good for America. That's the bottom line, Jeb. It's that simple. It doesn't get any simpler in politics. You don't come from 5% to be the winner with that kind of a policy. It might be popular in boardrooms. It might be popular with the top 1%. It ain't popular with the people. And that includes an awful lot of Republicans and Democrats. And if you want to be president, you got to win both of them. And right now, your campaign is a big, fat loser. And I think the writing's on the wall. I think the next candidate to drop out could possibly be Jeb Bush. Because the blood's in the water. Be right back. Hey, if you like shooting as much as I do, you've probably been to a lot of ranges. Unless you visited Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you've never seen anything like it. On the way there, you'll find yourself taking pictures as you traverse the majestic Azusa Canyon and wind your way up into the Angeles National Forest. With over 600 acres, including 19 private ranges, there's something for everyone. There's rifle and pistol ranges for beginners, right up to advanced shooters. And there's plenty of spaces to shoot sporting clay. You can make a family day of it, or you can bring a group for team building exercises. Bring a picnic lunch. On the weekends, they provide lunch. And don't worry, they always have ammo in case you forget yours or run out. One thing I can guarantee is that once you visited my friends at Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you'll be hooked and you'll keep coming back. BurroCanyon.com is their website, or call them at 626-910-1344. 626-910-1344. So I'm sure you have heard the news by now, but the Department of Justice is not going to further investigate the IRS. Lois Lerner and her little band of cohorts who intimidated and abused their power by auditing members of Tea Party groups, by refusing to give the tax-exempt status and completing the paperwork for numerous Tea Party groups who were, of course, a threat to an agency like the IRS, who really exists as a legacy. They don't exist for any legitimate purpose anymore because we don't need the IRS. We could do what they do with, instead of 97,717 people, we could probably do it with 700 or less and a bunch of computers that would simply process the paperwork. And, of course, it would require us to simplify the tax code. It would require us to treat the American taxpayer with some respect. It would require us to take a stand against the moneyed interests and the lobbyists who continually fight for every single line in every single budget so that never, ever do we get the kind of reform that we need to shrink government. That's the bottom line. But I just thought you should know another disappointment. We've got a Republican Congress. They're the majority. You wouldn't know it by anything that is coming out of Washington, D.C., because every time you turn around, the machine, the government mafia, is getting one over on the people. And the Republicans aren't doing a damn thing to stop it. Yeah, they did it. I thought they did a fairly good job yesterday in the hearings with Hillary Clinton, but she's unscathed. She's out there. She's running strong. They have failed to connect. They have failed to connect. It's kind of like a boxer who is in the ring, but either never throws a punch, or when he throws them, they miss the opponent. And you exert a lot of energy throwing a punch that misses. And that seems to be par for the course for the Republicans in Washington, D.C. And I don't know what's going to change, because now there's this big push. The official candidate is going to be Paul Ryan. They're going to push Paul Ryan. The Freedom Caucus has basically caved. So now you're going to have an establishment hack as your speaker. We're going to have business as usual. What's the point? I really don't get it. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me. 323-746-TALK is our number. Maybe you can help me out here. What is the point of voting Republican? What is the point of getting excited about Republicans when they get into power and they do nothing? They do less than nothing. If they just did nothing effectively and wouldn't let anything through, kind of like being putting everybody in goal in a hockey game, If you could just protect the goal. But every day there's some new initiative, there's some new executive order, there's a new push. I mean, do you realize the president vetoed a over $600 billion budget bill for defense? He just vetoed it. Said, we're not funding it. We're not going to do it. We're vetoing it. And you remember back when the Republicans wanted to simply stop that one line item that would have funded the personnel to execute Obama's executive amnesty in the Department of Homeland Security budget. Remember that? Remember the furor of the press? You're going to shut down national security. We won't have border security. You're going to put the whole country at risk, all because of you have a partisan agenda. Really? I don't know why they never learn their lesson. The press hates you. When you're a Republican and you come into power, you need to understand that the mainstream left stream is a left-wing ideological organization. All of the newspapers, all of the major papers and major networks in this country, with the exception of Fox News. Fox News is more of a center-left. They're not a center-right organization. They're a center-left organization. But that's it. The rest of them are left-wing. Far, and the only question is, how far left are they? So they hate you. All right, so let's say that you're the Speaker of the House and you arrive in Washington, D.C. Are you going to let those who hate you, those who oppose you, those who support policies that you were elected to oppose, that you have presented that you oppose deep down in your heart, you're going to let them set your agenda? You're going to let them dictate the terms with which you will fight? When you have these monolithic, powerful forces, you see, they don't let the ideologue set the terms. They let the negotiators, the power brokers, behind the scenes, they set the terms of the battle before the battle begins. It reminds me of that scene in Braveheart, where the two nobles go out and they're going to negotiate with the king's people, and they're having their polite conversation, and all of a sudden, somebody asks, one of his henchmen asks William Wallace where he's going. He says, I'll be right back. He says, where are you going? He says, I'm going to pick a fight. He goes over there. He moons them. He insults them. He provokes them until they're so livid that they have no choice but to fight. You see, that's what Newt Gingrich was. That's the kind of speaker that he was. He knew how to provoke that fight and then how to win it. Paul Ryan, John Boehner, these guys wouldn't know what to do in a fight. They've already sold you out long before you ever watched the show. And that's what most people miss. And so, one more example. The IRS goes after the Tea Party. The Republicans cannot even though they're in the majority, can't even get a law enforcement agency, can't even get a department of government to effectively investigate a clear cut. We're not talking about some mild bank shot. We're talking about a full-blown frontal assault, abuse of power on the First Amendment. On the First Amendment right of Americans who were seeking redress of their grievances from their government, who were demanding accountability. I know a lot of these Tea Party leaders, and I can tell you right now, they were personally audited. They were personally harassed. Their businesses were harassed. They were asked for a list of names of people who attended Tea Party meetings, kind of like the communist witch hunts back in the 50s, where you had to give a list of names and political affiliations and all that. That is exactly what was done to Tea Party leaders and their membership and their friends and their family and businesses they were involved in. And in a Republican-controlled Congress, They couldn't hold a hearing on this. They couldn't get it done. They couldn't get... I'm sorry. Let me restate that. They hold hearings all day long, but then nothing happens. Nothing. This is bigger news than Hillary getting away with the Benghazi lie, because this literally goes to the heart of what those men and women fight for who paid with their lives. This is what they fight for, which is our freedom. That First Amendment is enshrined in the hearts of every American. And to have it pissed on and to have it trampled on by a government agency that we don't even need, and then no one is held accountable. No one goes to jail. No one is even going to be reprimanded or anything else. It's literally going to be swept under the rug. Oh, yeah, we're supposed to vote Republican because they're going to ride to the rescue. Well, if that's any example of riding to the rescue, count me out. Take a quick break, and we will come back. Got an interesting story on high school journalist teacher who gets fired for standing up for the First Amendment. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turner's is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. One thing we try to do here at the Radio Free California Network is inform, educate, and engage you. And sometimes when people of courage, when they do the right thing, and this, maybe I shouldn't even just say sometimes, oftentimes, when you stand up and do the right thing, if what you're doing is perceived as a threat by those who hold power, they're willing to abuse their power in order to further their own agenda or protect their own ass, CYA. And in this case, it is San Gabriel High School principal Jim Schofield, who basically tells a newspaper advisor, Jennifer Kim, who is covering the student newspaper called the Matador, tells her to kill a story and suggests she runs a fluff piece instead. And this advisor, who's a teacher, Jennifer Kim, backed the students and said that she would stand up for them and that they had a right to publish what they published. Well, for her troubles, she was let go and suspended. Here's the story.
I worry about a generation of kids whose rights not only have been taken away, but who have been taught by overcautious school administrators to scorn rights, to not believe in them, and to question them.
When the newspaper staff at this California high school wanted to write about the firing of a popular teacher, administrators reacted in all the wrong ways, starting with an attempt to censor the student reporters and ending with the suspension of the journalism teacher who tried to stand up for their rights.
Rights are rights, regardless of whether you exercise them in a school or whether you exercise them out in the real world.
The staffers of the award-winning high school newspaper, The Matador, take their roles as student journalists seriously and want to cover the stories that matter to their classmates. So it's no surprise that they began investigating after the school's principal pulled a popular first-year teacher and debate coach into his office and terminated his contract.
He didn't deserve to be fired. He hadn't done anything wrong, so we wanted to fight for him to come back.
What do we want? Andrew hired! When do we want it? Now!
Student protests formed. It was a classic student newspaper story. Popular teacher fired with no explanation.
Of course, as a newspaper, you want to report on things that have a large impact. And because Andrew Nguyen had touched so many people, they wanted to report on it because of the reaction that it caused.
It's still unclear why Nguyen was let go, and he declined to comment in this video. But he waived his right to privacy in a handwritten letter to the Matador's staff, and rumors began circulating about a personality conflict with the school's principal, Jim Schofield.
In all my previous years of going to San Gabriel High School, Mr. Schofield didn't really come into our classes very often. But that past year, having Mr. Nguyen, he was coming in and checking on him all the time, and it just didn't seem natural.
When I first started out on the whole Andrew Nguyen case, a couple of editors told me that they needed a photographer to cover a sit-in. My main interaction was with the principal, Jim Schofield. When he came out and he saw that there were students standing in solidarity and also that I was taking photographs and covering the incident, he was somewhat irate.
After a student reporter asked Principal Jim Schofield to comment on Nguyen's firing, he fired off a series of concerned emails to newspaper advisor Jennifer Kim. In this one, he orders her to kill the story and suggests a fluffy profile piece instead.
The principal's decision is very problematic. It's pretty clear that writing a story about a controversy over a teacher being fired is protected by California statute.
Ken White is a First Amendment attorney and writer for the popular law, politics, and culture blog, Pope Hat. He says free speech rights can get complicated when you're talking about public high schools, but that we can turn to the Supreme Court for some guidance.
For a long time, it was assumed that public high school students didn't have any more free speech rights than their principals wanted to give them. The key there was the case of Tinker versus Des Moines during the Vietnam War. Some students wanted to wear black armbands to protest the war. The school didn't want to let them do it. What the Tinker court said, and what was really the high watermark for student free speech rights, was that students have the right to express themselves as long as it does not disrupt the educational environment. Ever since Tinker, there's been a steady march of school administrators arguing that speech causes disruption, and the Supreme Court, for the most part, going along with them. In the Hazelwood case, what the Supreme Court said was it didn't really matter whether or not the speech in a student newspaper met the Tinker test, whether it caused actual disruption or could be expected to. The school paper, if it was controlled by the school and regulated by the school, was really the school's speech. And the school didn't have to be a platform for speech it didn't like, so that reasonable restrictions on what goes into the paper are going to be upheld.
While the Supreme Court retreated on student speech rights, California marched forward and strengthened them.
What the California statute does is takes the protection further. You can write things in the paper and the school can't punish you for it unless they're actual incitement to disruption. Now in San Gabriel, you had a paper that wanted to talk about the controversy over a popular teacher being fired. The principal's initial excuse was that they couldn't publish it because the teacher has privacy rights. What the students were doing was reporting. They were not purporting to make an official statement on behalf of the school. They were doing what a student reporter should do, which is to ask why, to ask people how they feel about it, and to write what they find out.
The staff of the Matador knew their rights and pushed back, enlisting the help of the ACLU and the Student Press Law Center. They began showing up at school board meetings, raising hell and demanding answers.
Does not collaborate. Instead, I found that the district bullies, harasses, and retaliates.
I've always been an adamant believer of standing up for what you believe in, especially in the face of adversity. And with what's happened with the school, especially at the Alhambra Unified School District, telling us, you can't do this when in fact we are, protected, it's kind of reaffirmed my belief. And it's also taught me to be a little bit more skeptical about authority in a way.
Finally, the principal
always
relented
got to be skeptical
and allowed
about authority.
publication. But this sort
There's something about the assault on the First Amendment, especially when young people want to tell the truth, that is so chilling. And yet it's so prevalent at our educational institutions. We're teaching young people to be afraid. I don't know how else to put it, but it's chilling. Deeply chilling. Hey, if you like shooting as much as I do, you've probably been to a lot of ranges. Unless you visited Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you've never seen anything like it. On the way there, you'll find yourself taking pictures as you traverse the majestic Azusa Canyon and wind your way up into the Angeles National Forest. With over 600 acres, including 19 private ranges, there's something for everyone. There's rifle and pistol ranges for beginners, right up to advanced shooters. And there's plenty of spaces to shoot sporting clays. You can make a family day of it, or you can bring a group for team building exercises. Bring a picnic lunch. On the weekends, they provide lunch. And don't worry, they always have ammo in case you forget yours or run out. One thing I can guarantee is that once you visited my friends at Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you'll be hooked and you'll keep coming back. BurroCanyon.com is their website, or call them at 626-910-1344, 626-910-1344. So we're playing you a clip from a video about the suppression of the First Amendment. This is a video from Reason.com, and we ended with about 2 minutes left in the video. We're going to go ahead and finish it for you and then discuss.
Finally, the principal relented and allowed publication. But this ordeal was far from over. Newspaper advisor Jennifer Kim also oversaw the publication of the yearbook. And during summer yearbook camp, she had a run-in with the new principal after she allegedly tried to influence the content of their publication.
To a lot of people, it kind of looks like this is retaliation for the Matadors coverage during the summer.
If this teacher said to his or her superiors, "I think you're breaking the law," then that is potentially illegal retaliation.
School board officials and administrators declined requests for comment. But every month, students continue showing up at board meetings and badgering district officials about their conduct.
One thing that troubles me about this is that the principal and the school are not only disciplining kids, not only regulating their conduct, but they're modeling. They're teaching them values. And it bothers me when people like principals and teachers model and teach anti-speech values.
See, that's the whole point. If you don't understand that this is a fundamental natural right, and when you go up against administrators, and look, administrators have a certain amount of power. There's no police that are going to come rushing in to referee whether or not they are denying you your fundamental natural rights, like the First Amendment. So you've got to take a stand, but you can't take a stand if you don't really know what your rights are. And I'm really proud of this advisor for standing with the kids and saying, look, we're going to tell the truth, even if it's tough, even if it's uncomfortable. I mean, when you look at all the stuff that's going on campuses, I can just picture this. I can picture a kid writing an op-ed that says that we ought to be able to carry guns on campus, or that our teachers ought to be able to carry guns on campus, or somebody with a CCW ought to be able to carry on campus to keep us safe, or ourselves to ensure our own safety, let's say if you're in college. and of age, obviously, not under the age of 18 or actually 21. And when it comes to being able to purchase a firearm. So what would they do? Would they want to censor that, block that out because it's considered an unpopular opinion in academic circles? Really? I mean, I always was taught to believe that the education, especially at the college level, that this was supposed to be intellectual freedom, the battleground of ideas, the place where you had these monolithic clashes between differing ideas. And whoever won. But see, what you discover is it's much like the political environment. It's much like the corporate environment. There are these forces who represent the status quo, and they censor viewpoints that they consider to be untenable. We've talked about it many times on the show. You've got colleges that are literally banning words like illegal alien. They don't want you to use accurate language. They prefer that you not actually present certain viewpoints. Certain viewpoints are considered not just irrelevant. See, the marketplace can make ideas irrelevant. The marketplace of ideas. But there are some viewpoints that are inappropriate. They're untenable. They are opinions that are illegitimate. And when you have the power to say ideas are illegitimate, or you want to exercise power over the ability to discuss, debate, and engage in the struggle for superiority of your ideas, meaning you've got to put them up against other ideas. You've got to be willing to go out there and make a case. Whatever happened to that? Where you try to persuade someone that this was done with letters to the editor, it was done with op-eds, it was done with debates that were held on various topics throughout our history. Remember the Scopes monkey trial? We actually had a huge argument over big issues. We didn't know what the outcome was going to be. See, that doesn't happen today. Everyone knew what the outcome was going to be yesterday at the Hillary Clinton trials, where the Hill's grills, Hill getting grilled. Everyone knew it. She was going to be polished and coached to never give any ground and never create any new truth and never create any news. All the news that was created, other than her attitude, was created by the investigatory work of the committee. And I noted that Trey Gowdy, numerous times, Chairman Gowdy, made a point that the previous investigations, which had occurred in 2013 by Congress, had developed virtually no information. They hadn't even come up with the relevant emails. They hadn't even interviewed the relevant personnel who were on the ground who would have known the facts. It really makes you question the competency of our government, something that perhaps we wouldn't have done 20 years ago or 50 years ago. We certainly would have thought, at least if you're going to look into something, you would connect the dots. It's kind of like looking at an electrical problem in a car and never checking to see if the battery cable is disconnected. You might be laughing and say, well, who in the world would do that? Let me tell you, when I first got out here to California, I had this little VW Bug convertible, and it always had a problem. For some reason, it would never start. So as I drove it all the way across the country, I was having to push start it. And one day I was down in Newport Beach, and I'm driving. It was evening, and I'm driving, and I can see in the reflection of the store windows, I can see sparks shooting out from under my car. So I pulled over, climbed underneath there, And lo and behold, the battery cable was stuck in some grease, and it was touching, or is close enough to touch some ground metal, and it was creating a spark. Which I had just finished paying $212 to a European specialized repair shop in Manhattan Beach. That went through my whole electrical system and assured me everything was fine. And the reality was I needed a $5 battery cable, which I got at Pep Boys the next day, and the problem was solved. And we see the same thing here. Trey Gowdy is trying to get the $5 battery cable and connect the relevant dots and ask the relevant questions, and Hillary stonewalled. That's all she did. And she was damn good at it. And she got away with it. And the Republicans are still in the majority, and no one knows it because they are not an effective opposition party, even though they have all the power. What does that tell you? It tells you need to go back to the drawing board and do something different. Trying the same thing over and over again and hoping for a different result is the definition of insanity. So putting up Jeb Bush, definition of insanity. We don't want more establishment hacks. Putting up Paul Ryan, definition of insanity. They need to get together and work together and find a playbook. Come up with a playbook. Why don't you guys go to the other side, the light side, and go find somebody with some testicular fortitude and put that person up there for a change and see if it'll make any difference. I don't know, but we will talk more about it and take your calls when we get back. 323-746-TALK. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. You know, with Ben Carson closing in on the heels of, well, actually, he's closed on the heels of Donald Trump. He's 8 to 9 points ahead in the Iowa caucuses. I'm curious if you've changed your mind and you've gone from supporting Donald Trump to supporting Ben Carson, or are Ben Carson supporters coming from the other candidates? Because right now, we're not seeing much in the news. Now look, one thing about presidential races, just like gubernatorial races on a much smaller scale, but what you see right now is simply the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be a much deeper, much more overt attempt to persuade you when we get into the actual money spending part of the campaign. Right now, it's all free media, it's earned media, it's whoever can gather and garner the attention. You've got guys who are very quiet, who are stealthily stalking the likes of Donald Trump, like Ted Cruz. Senator Ted Cruz is raising a lot of money, and he's got I believe, a strong base of support, but it's not measured right now in the polls. And I can't exactly put my finger on it. If you're a Ted Cruz supporter or a, let's say, reluctant Ted Cruz supporter, or you're kind of saying, well, I'm not quite sure what he's going to do, I'd love to hear how you feel about him, because there's a lot of people that think he's going to be moving in on the heels of these two individuals and do much better than anyone expects. And that could happen. Anything could happen. But with Ben Carson moving ahead in Iowa, and a lot of people are crediting that to his strong presence on Facebook. One thing that you have Ben Carson doing that Donald Trump and some others aren't doing, he's going on there every day and he's answering 3 questions personally. It's a good idea. People want to engage with the actual candidate, and he's creating his own sort of celebrity by doing that. And he's got more followers than Hillary Clinton does, and she's been the Secretary of State, and he's been a neurosurgeon. He's been sort of an unknown neurosurgeon until he gave that speech at the National Prayer Breakfast and had the courage to do it with President Obama sitting right next to him. That's the audacity of what he did of criticizing and condemning Obamacare and lifting up the entrepreneurial spirit and championing free market principles when it comes to healthcare. That put him on instantly in the national spotlight. He was instantly a topic of conversation, as he should have been. And now he is a presidential contender, and people are trying to figure out what the appeal is. He doesn't have a lot of charisma. He doesn't exude a ton of energy, but he's got his own likability. He's a lot more likable than Hillary. I'll give him that. Good Lord. And he's very, very intelligent and well-spoken. He's thoughtful, but he's also said some things that are a little bit out there. But then again, you know, he doesn't back away from what he believes in. And right now, courage is king. You know how they always say money is the mother's milk of politics? Well, Jeb Bush was raising more money than anybody. But Jeb Bush doesn't exhibit and doesn't exude any courage. There is no personal moral courage that you think about when you look at Jeb Bush. Instead, you see milquetoast. You see a guy that might be your CPA, but would never be your president. You look at a Ben Carson who has literally operated inside the human skull on the most sensitive organ that we have, and had a successful career doing that. You look at Donald Trump, who has championed himself and of course been incredibly successful in business, in real estate and everything. You even look at Hillary Clinton, love her or hate her, she's been successful in the political realm at surviving. And we'll see if she survives. I think she's easily now going to be, without question, the Democrat nominee. I don't think you can reasonably say, given everything that's out there and given that none of it sticks and there's nobody close enough and Joe Biden has made it clear he's not going to get in, that ship has sailed. You are looking at the Democrat nominee for president, and now it's up to the Republicans. This is what it's up to them to do, really. It isn't up to them to field a candidate who can beat her. Forget all that nonsense. It's up to them to get behind the candidate who can beat her. Because whichever candidate wins, if you fracture the party, which is what they usually do if a conservative wins, they fracture the party to make sure the conservative doesn't win, and therefore ensuring that you get a crony capitalist Democrat or a Marxist progressive Democrat, depending on which personality shows up that day. And certainly you're going to get someone who is a crony capitalist, corrupt crony capitalist with Hillary Clinton. But literally, it is within the power of the Republican Party at the highest levels to undermine the Republican nominee if it's someone like Donald Trump. And they'll do it. So the challenge then is to embarrass them, cajole them, threaten them into actually supporting the Republican nominee instead of, by default, supporting the Democrat nominee and undermining the Republican because they can't control him. And that's going to be the real question once we get past the primary and we know who the two gladiators are going to be. And that will be a very, very interesting development. And I'll tell you why. It's very simple. We have never had the kind of media. Every individual can be their own media source. They can create a video on YouTube that goes viral, and now they are as big, essentially, at putting out information as a network. So all eyes will be on the GOP to see what they do.
Don't you think it's about time you treat yourself or someone you love to something very special? Well, Ozell Jewelers, the finest jewelry store in the high desert, is known throughout the high desert for having the largest variety of fine-looking jewelry and gifts for every special occasion. Ozell custom designs and manufactures their own jewelry, so you'll be able to find exclusive, one-of-a-kind, stunning styles you won't find anywhere else in Southern California. If you're looking for fine jewelry at unbeatable prices, Ozell Jewelers is the place to go. Show appreciation to that special person in your life with something special to cherish forever. Ozell Jewelers, voted best jewelers in the high desert by the Daily Press regularly for years. Ozell Jewelers has been putting smiles on high desert faces for over 30 years. Ozell Jewelers in Rancho Cucamonga, Palm Desert, and Amargosa Road by Red Lobster in Victorville. Ozell Jewelers.
Three 323-746-TALK is our number. If you want to weigh in, we will take your calls pretty much on any topic. I'm sort of conflicted because I love talking about Donald Trump and I love talking about what's going on there. And at the same time, the Hillary story has been so dominant in the headlines. And so, you pick the topic. Just make sure you tell us where you're from, first name and where you're from, so that when we bring you on air, we know who you are. But here's the thing. There's all kinds of crazy stories going on across the country, and we haven't really talked about California in a while. And I have a meanwhile in California segment that you will not believe. You have a city manager. You remember a number of cities like Stockton and others that went bankrupt. Well, one of them was Vallejo. And if you've never been to Vallejo, well, it is a hardscrabble port town with lots of bridges, and it has a lot of it's a hard scrabble town. Let me just say that. It's a blue-collar town. It is not one of these sleepy bedroom communities. It's a working port town. And retired Vallejo city manager Joseph Tanner, in order to spike his pension, worked 2.5 more years past retirement and it boosted his annual pension from $131,500. I mean, I just want you to think about this for a minute. You work as a city manager, and you're going to get $131,500 a year pension, and that's not enough for you. So you play a little game, and you shoot it up to $216,000, and that's not enough for you. He claims he wants more. He says he's entitled to a yearly payment of $307,000. $307,000. Think about that. This from a city that went bankrupt. An administrative law judge, the Board of California Public Employees Retirement System, and a Sacramento County judge all rejected his outlandish pension spiking attempt. So, but he's not done because he's not happy. So he's going to take this 6-year-long dispute to the State Court of Appeal. And an issue is whether or not CalPERS, and if you don't know what CalPERS is, that is the California Retirement Fund that includes most state employees. CalSTRS is the teacher's version of it, okay? So you have CalPERS and CalSTRS, and when I was in the assembly, every year we would approve money to hand over to both of these retirement funds in order to create a stopgap and cover their losses. At issue is whether or not CalPERS must pay benefits on a contract that Tanner and the Vallejo City Council concocted to boost his pension, or whether the retirement system has the legal right and responsibility to set boundaries. So far, the rulings have come down on the side of sanity. Ironically, Tanner was a critic of pension excesses. He went to Vallejo as it was teetering on bankruptcy, which it eventually filed, and he worked hard to rewrite generous labor contracts that had pushed the city toward insolvency. And yet his personal spiking gambit is breathtaking. I mean, here's a case that exemplifies how some top officials try to manipulate their compensation to grossly inflate their retirement pay. I for the life of me, cannot understand, maybe you can help me, why are we paying him a pension at all? You work for the government, you get an outlandish paycheck to start with. Can't you just be grateful? Can't you take some of your money and invest it like the rest of us? I mean, I went in the California State Assembly for 4 years, and they don't pay you a pension. And look, when you run for politics, you put yourself out there. A city manager's not at any risk of any major criticism or blowback for any reason. It's just a job. It's just a job. But see, here's the thing. If you don't pay the city manager a pension, and if the city council doesn't get pensions, then they're not going to want to approve them for all the other city workers. It's a jealousy thing. It's just human nature. But this is what has bankrupted many of our cities. It's not that some people it's not that you couldn't argue and make a case that some people don't deserve a pension. If you served in the military and put your life on the line and were injured, I would say, hell yeah, I'll pay. I'll be glad to pay. Same thing with a cop that gets injured. But why do we have to pay every police officer, every firefighter, every single city employee, every county employee, every single person on the planet Earth believes they're entitled to a pension? And yeah, you could make a case for some more so than others. I get that. Fine. But that's not what we're doing. We're paying everybody, and this is the kind of stuff they do. To be sure, neither side has clean hands. CalPERS administrators first denied Tanner a portion of his pension to which he was entitled, but they ultimately relented. That got him to the $216,000 jackpot. But Tanner's request for another $90,000 plus inflation adjustments for the rest of his life is, I mean, it's beyond unreasonable. He was nearly 62 when he retired in 2009. Funding just that additional benefit would require an immediate outpouring of unanticipated $1.1 to $1.5 million into CalPERS investments. Meaning, let me put that into English for you. That money is going to come from you. When they say we're going to have to put in more money into CalPERS investments, that money is going to come from the taxpayers. It is siphoned off from the general fund and it is put into CalPERS. And we don't get to say anything about it. It's all constitutionally based. So they dictate to the people what they're going to pay, or I'm sorry, what they're going to take from the Treasury. And the governor always rubber stamps it. The legislature approves it, and it's done. This is, I don't know if this outrages you as much as it outrages me, because it doesn't acknowledge the reality that things have changed. We are not the society that we used to be, where the public sector paid a meager paycheck and you went there for the benefits. You took the job for the benefits because the paycheck sucked. The paycheck was lower than you could get in the private sector. That's the way public service used to be. Now, with the advent of public sector unions, the paycheck is much larger than you make in the private sector. You can almost never be fired. If anybody tries to make you pay your medical or any increased portion of your retirement every month or make a contribution, your union will go fight it. You don't even have to worry about it. It's pretty much a done deal as soon as your union starts fighting it, because they'll terrify the politicians into approving it. Doesn't matter. And they don't care if they bankrupt the cities or the states or the counties. It's irrelevant, because all that money is going to go into their pockets and into their membership, and then they can extract larger dues, and then they can bribe politicians, even more politicians, and continue to protect this fiefdom, but at what cost? And then when a lot of the people that are getting these pensions, when they retire, they get the hell out of California. They wind up moving to Oregon and all these other states and take their pension income with them. And meanwhile, the hardworking California taxpayer is still here holding the bag. 323-746-TALK. We'll be right back after this message. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turner's is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. 323-746-TALK is our number. We're going to go straight to the phones and take your calls. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tim. This is Marty.
Hey, Marty. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. This is kind of on that same thing that you were talking about the teacher assistant the other day, which is parallel to the public employees. But one thing that just catch my eye with that,
Marty, you're kind of breaking up a little bit. You're not coming in real strong. Are you in a good cell area?
Yeah, but I don't know. It just kind of keeps crackling.
Hey, what?
The only thing I wanted to bring up was the change.
I can't hear you, so why don't you call me right back, and maybe we'll get a better line, okay? Because I want to hear what you got to say. Yeah, that was really tough. I don't know if you guys were having as much trouble hearing him as I was, but I figure if you were, then let's see if this is any better. Hey, Marty, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, but it's still cracking a little bit on my end. But
much
it
better.
seems better.
Yeah.
Now, the big thing that I wanted to talk about was the tenure that teachers get. I mean, where in God's green earth do you work for 5 years and then you can never be fired for anything? Yeah, they have teachers in the L.A. school district that have molested kids, and they sit around in the coffee room because they can't fire them.
Yeah,
that's
a huge issue, because when you try to do reform, when you try to do education reform, what it comes down to is figuring out how to encourage and reward those teachers who are more effective and be able to get rid of teachers who suck. It's that simple.
Oh, absolutely.
And in places where they've actually gotten the teachers union on board, like they did with some reforms in Colorado, what they did is they got rid of tenure, and in order to reward the good teachers, they offered to pay them more, but in order to pay them more, they had to be able to fairly evaluate them. And once they got, and that's the sticking point. The unions never want to agree to any sort of an evaluation, but they came up with a system that wasn't bad. It was divided into thirds. So a third of it was test results. A third of it was classroom performance, which was evaluated by a number of different people so that you didn't just get stuck with the same evaluator, and it was multiple times in a year, not just once. And then a third of it was your own professional development, what you invested in becoming a better teacher and a better communicator and presenter. And the bottom line is it massively improved the results, not only for the teachers, but for the students. So you had a school system that was now operating at a much higher level of effectiveness. And you also had the ability to take the rotten apple. This is a good example. You know, everyone always gives the teacher an apple. Take the rotten apples out. And what that does is that improves morale. Because you wind up having young teachers who come in who could be terrific. They could be fantastic. But if you're stuck, especially when you have to make cuts, if you're stuck firing a young teacher who's good so that you can keep a teacher who has been systematically below par or is just a flat-out horrible teacher but is protected by tenure, the morale skyrockets in a district where you begin rewarding and acknowledging that which the more effective and enthusiastic teachers, you reward them for their performance. And next thing you know, more people are going to be motivated to perform. It's good for the bottom line because getting a raise doesn't suck. Nobody gets mad when you give them a raise. Nobody on the planet Earth. And as a matter of fact, people feel better because they feel like they're being acknowledged for what they did. And they make that correlation, and that acknowledgement is as important as the dollars that they might see in their paycheck. So, Marty, I know we didn't have a very good connection on the phone, but you made a great point, and I couldn't agree more. I think we just need to move the free market into the government. It doesn't make any sense to have this wall between the public and the private sector, where the public sector works according to rules from 150 years ago, and the private sector works with rules from 10 years from now, basically. The private sector is creating all kinds of new technology that is a threat to many of the old ways that we do things. But anytime you threaten an old way of doing things, two things happen. One, you create opportunity. You create new opportunities. And two, you capture the benefits of efficiencies. You literally save money and you save resources. You save capital, both human and otherwise. And when you do that, that capital can then be used to fund new ideas and new technologies and new ways of doing things and new business opportunities and new jobs and all kinds of things. That's the beauty of the free market when it is working the way it's supposed to. And if we could unleash free market efficiencies into the government, can you imagine? Wouldn't it be nice to do all your DMV stuff at home and never have to go into the DMV and deal with a DMV employee? Deal with somebody who works for the SEIU who actually practices how to be rude to you? And wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice to just push a button, print out your own driver's license? I mean, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm oversimplifying it a little bit. But push a button and then it gets mailed to you, okay? Maybe you could take your own picture from your computer or your Instagram or something where you could take a nice picture. You could smile. It could be a selfie, and that becomes your driver's license photo. Why are we stuck in the 18th century when it comes to these bureaucracies? We're stuck because there is a tremendous amount of money, and it all starts and ends with the public sector unions who are able to take that money from their members and use it to bribe politicians so they get fatter and fatter contracts and a bigger fiefdom and more laws passed that encroach your freedom so that they can have jobs. It's that simple. And, you know, when something's that simple and that clear-cut, eventually it will come down and eventually it will unravel of its own weight. And we're getting closer and closer to that when you see, and I'll take you through a little bit further through the case I was starting to talk to you about earlier, because it gives some great insights into how this happens. Be right back after these messages.
Don't you think it's about time you treat yourself or someone you love to something very special? Well, Ozell Jewelers, the finest jewelry store in the high desert, is known throughout the high desert for having the largest variety of fine-looking jewelry and gifts for every special occasion. Ozell custom designs and manufactures their own jewelry, so you'll be able to find exclusive, one-of-a-kind, stunning styles you won't find anywhere else in Southern California. If you're looking for fine jewelry at unbeatable prices, Ozell Jewelers is the place to go. Show appreciation to that special person in your life with something special to cherish forever. Ozell Jewelers, voted best jewelers in the high desert by the Daily Press regularly for years. Ozell Jewelers has been putting smiles on high desert faces for over 30 years. Ozell Jewelers in Rancho Cucamonga, Palm Desert, and Amargosa Road by Red Lobster in Victorville. Ozell Jewelers.
Hey, welcome back to the show. You're listening to the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in California. We're going to go back to the phones, 323-746-TALK, if you want to call in. Hey, welcome to the show.
Tim, I wanted to call and thank you for the great job you're doing on the show. You keep us engaged, you keep us encouraged, and we need a lot of that these days. This is John Wesley.
Well, I'm glad that that you like the show, John. And look, this is much more than just entertainment. This is about informing and engaging people and educating them to understand what the true issues are. Because, as you know, the left stream media certainly isn't going to do that.
Absolutely. If I could, Tim, maybe I'll get in a little plug for what we're doing tomorrow over at the Bear Valley Highway 15 overpass.
Is that your protest in favor of the Second Amendment?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And,
well, a big part of this show is engaging the public. So if you are listening in the Talk 960 audience, you might want to participate. John, what are the details of your protest? What time and where?
Yes, we're going to be at the Bear Valley Road overpass, Highway 15 in Bear Valley, 10 to 1. We ask people to bring signs, flags. We have the Oath Keepers that are co-sponsoring along with Overpasses for America High Desert, and we hope we'll get some people out. Matter of fact, I went up and looked up on Popbox, and I pulled up guns, and I found 2 pages of legislation, so we've got our work cut out for us.
Well, we certainly do, especially with this initiative, this ballot initiative being pushed by none other than Lieutenant Governor Gavin gun-hating Newsom, who would like to strangle the Second Amendment out of existence, starting with requiring you to get a background check. Picture this. You're on your way home. You stop by your local Turner's, which I highly recommend since they sponsor this show. And you make sure you mention the Tim Donnelly Show. You get your ammo, but no, you can't just walk home with it. You can't get your brick of whatever your favorite caliber is because you have to go through a background check. Picture that. Think about that.
I really have, Tim, and it's. I saw the article on what Newsom is proposing. If I'm not mistaken, he'd have us buy a license to buy a round of ammunition.
Yeah, no, that's the proposal, and then he wants to confiscate your magazines if they hold too many rounds. And there's just a point at which we have to stand up and push back and say no, and take a stand against a government that has become the greatest threat to our fundamental natural right to defend our own lives. John, good luck with your protest tomorrow, and thanks for calling, and thanks for engaging in the battle.
Thank you for all you do. We really appreciate it, Tim. Thank you, sir.
Godspeed. Hey, look, it ain't rocket science. If you care about your freedoms, show up. Go do something. Connect with people who are doing something. There's nothing more powerful, especially at a moment like now when so many people are leaving the state of California. They've just given up, and they're done. Well, that didn't help us. We need people who will stay and fight. We need people who will stand up and be counted, and we need to increase the numbers. It's got to go beyond the Oath Keepers and the Tea Party and engage ordinary citizens who right now don't even think about politics. See, that's where the power is. The power is with those who are able to engage the unengaged, able to engage those who have not been politically active, and ultimately get them politically active and get enough of them politically active to where you become a force. And once you become a force to be reckoned with and you become the determiner of the so-called swing vote, can you imagine if the politicians treated gun owners with the same respect they treat illegal aliens? Could you just picture what a beautiful world that would be? I mean, just think. We'd be out there, and any time there's a problem with anyone with a gun, you'd have the politicians standing up and saying, I just want all the gun owners to come in out of the shadows. I don't want them to be put upon and to be separated from their firearms or their magazines or their ammunition. Can we just all get along and I mean, this could be such a beautiful relationship because it's actually inculcated in the Bill of Rights. It is the Second Amendment. And there is no other that is as significant, because when you lose the Second Amendment, you lose the First. And the First contains most of your freedoms. The First contains the right for you to seek redress of your grievances, to protest them, to demand accountability from them, to lobby them, to push them, to affect their decisions as your voice. It also contains your religious liberty. your freedom to practice your faith without interference from the government and or the government instituting and establishing its own religion. And then there's the freedom of the press, which they don't seem very interested in using. I can't tell you why, but that's one of the biggest parts of the problem, is we have a free press that is lazy, that is ideologically tainted, and refuses to see the truth when it involves one of their own. They refuse to bring down the corrupt when the corruption is so clear, so endemic, so obvious, but it's one of their favorite people, like Hillary Clinton. And we're gonna see those chickens are gonna come home to roost. That isn't just gonna go away because they've chosen to ignore it. There will be new scandals, which will be just like the old scandals, because there's a pattern. And she's never been held accountable. Speaking of accountability, you can hold your neighborhood accountable. You can actually set up your own neighborhood watch program. Imagine that. Instead of complaining, throwing things at the TV and the radio, instead of getting upset when you see crimes reported in the newspaper or hearing about them from neighbors, and there has been a spike in property crime in particular, in large part due to the government policies of Jerry Brown and others pushing criminals down to the county level, which wind up on our streets. Look, Wednesday, October 28th, that's next Wednesday, at the High Desert Association of Realtors, they've got two meetings. So you have two chances. The early meeting is at 3 p.m. The later one's at 6 p.m. They're right on Hesperia Road in between Bear Valley and Maine, and they will have a representative from the sheriff's department there to help you, to engage with you. You can ask whatever questions you want. And bottom line is, if you want some way to engage in your community, go to the Neighborhood Watch Program, October 28th, 3 and 6 p.m., right there at the High Desert Association of Realtors, 11890 Hesperia Road, Hesperia. We will be right back after this short break. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turner's is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. I promised that I would give you an insight into how this pension spiking works. And I got to tell you, going back to this case of this, I believe his name was Michael Tanner. He was the city manager in Pleasant Hill for 14 and a half years. Then he went over to Pacifica, where he's making $170,000 a year, which gave him a pension of $131,000. Then when Vallejo called him, here's a bankrupt city trying to bring over this guy. He was explicit. He would go to work for them only if they gave him a contract worth at least $300,000 of annual income that could be counted toward his pension calculation. I just don't know how to. I don't know how to think that way. It's beyond me. I don't know. If you can help me out with this 323-746 talk, we'll try to get your call in before we go here today. But literally making every calculation based on the money that's going to be paid to you for not working, and to be able to command to be able to command something like $200,000 a year. If you had to invest your own capital, you'd have to have millions of dollars invested. If you had $1 million and you could get a 20% return, that'd be your 200,000. But of course, then it would shrink, and then the next year it would shrink, and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. I'm going to go to the phones because I'm without words. Alan from Hesperia, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tim. Appreciate your show. You do a lot of good for us.
Well, thank you. How are you?
I don't know if this is out of context, but earlier I heard the interview between Megyn Kelly and Jeb Bush, and I thought I had the wrong radio station because I thought that she really liked Bush after what she did to Trump on the first debate. But I was just astounded.
No, you know what? I know Megyn Kelly. I've been on her show before. She is a tough-minded journalist. Now, she does opinion stuff too, but as far as getting to the heart of the matter and getting to the truth, there isn't anyone better. And Trump did not handle it well. But, you have to be willing to take... It's like if somebody throws you a really super hard pitch and you're good, you can knock it out of the park. There's no point in whining about how fast they can throw.
That's true, but all the pitches should be the same to all the members of the team. I mean, she didn't treat the other members like she treated Trump.
No, she had. You're right.
Megyn.
She had special contempt for Donald Trump. That's clear, but she threw that same contempt in Jeb Bush's face and made him answer. And it was funny. You know the part where she said, "Hey, you're at 5%," and he said, "Oh yeah, if people read my book on illegal immigration, they're going to think I'm wonderful." And she said, "No, they're really not, because they know what you stand for, and they know that Donald Trump, what he stands for." And she sort of gave a little characterization of Trump's view, saying that he says the Mexicans are all sending rapists and everyone else over here, and they love him and they're behind him, and that's why he's ahead in the polls, and you're not. You're never going to hear that anywhere else on Fox News or anywhere else in mainstream media. But she told the truth, and she threw it in his face, and I enjoyed that.
Well, I was amazed, and I might start watching Megyn again. Right now, I like Hannity real well, and I like your show, and that's about the only news that I know.
Well, you should always listen. You should always listen to the Tim Donnelly Show, Alan. As far as the rest,
absolutely,
the jury is out. But I do think giving Megyn Kelly a second chance is not a bad thing. Thanks for the call. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you again soon. Look, it's the bottom line, and Alan makes a good point. They should be fair-handed. They should be even-handed. If they had pride in what they do, then you would see that even-handedness, and you would see the tough questions going to everybody. And it's not easy to ask tough questions all the time, because what happens when you do that is you have people who won't come back on air. You have individuals who you'll be denied access. But you know what? If you've got integrity, but you also have to have a little personality. You've got to be able to develop a rapport, and then you've got to be able to go after them with the hard questions. And you can't come after them like a ton of bricks. You can't fall on them like a ton of bricks. You just can't. So there's a balance, and I think Megyn Kelly, more so than almost any of them, has always exhibited that. Maybe she didn't with Trump. She was a little too over the top, and clearly she paid a price for that. But I'd rather have a reporter who is tough on everybody, even my guy, even somebody that I like, than tough on nobody. Because the press is supposed to be the watchdog of the government. And if you want to run for president, you ought to be prepared for every tough question. And there's no place for whining. There's no room for whining. No whiners allowed. So, yeah, I think you should give Megyn Kelly a second chance. I think you should watch her, and she certainly took Jeb Bush to task. And that's not an easy thing for her to do, given that the Bushes are so tied to the political establishment, which her boss, Rupert Murdoch, is tied to, and they all defend each other. But you know what? They have to tolerate her because she has great ratings. And she is good at what she does. So, you know, in the end, she sells more soap than Hannity or O'Reilly or any of these other ones. That's why they put her in the primetime spot. And I think it's going to be. I definitely think she's certainly not going anywhere, and I don't think Donald Trump's going anywhere either. But I do think Jeb Bush. I wish we could do a betting pool on when Jeb Bush drops out. I don't think he makes it. Everybody thought he was going to be the big contender. I don't think he makes it. He's running out of money. It's being publicized. This is not good for a campaign at this level. This is a real problem. And you generally can't survive that kind of news, at least not for long. We heard the same thing out of the Scott Walker camp before he ultimately dropped out. So I'm saying Jeb Bush could be the next one out. You might think I'm crazy, but you're not going to be able to tell me that until next week because we are almost out of time. But I want to say thank you to Sean McNeil, our acting producer, engineer, all of our sponsors, and you. God bless you and Godspeed. Tim Donnelly Show, out.
Once so proudly we hailed at the twilight